I'd never seen anything like it. I'd never seen a portrait. It was like a headshot of a monkey, and he was, you know, looking all weird and funny, and I thought, this is really exciting. I showed it to this art gallery owner who I was introduced to through someone who I went to art school with, and you know, he was like, who wants a monkey on their wall? Like, that's weird, you know? But so we printed one large piece about that size, and he had it in his gallery, and people started asking about it. So he said, okay, maybe, you know, maybe I'll give you a show. Let's see what you can come up with. So I did some more shoots, and so it's like it was a very slow, even as a process to try to get a gallery to be interested in my work in the beginning, and then I did when I got a book deal to do the book. I had to do about 60 or 70 images, so that took me about 5 years to do all the monkeys, and then right after the monkeys, I did the crying children. I was photographing this sister and brother, and I was thinking I was going to do a series of little girls. This little girl was 6 or 7 years old, and I thought she was very cute. But then her brother was there, and he was wearing this very dirty T-shirt, so I decided to take pictures of him, and we took his T-shirt off, and he just started crying for no reason. And then when I got the pictures back, because I shot on film, I looked at the contact sheets, and it looked like he was crying and saying 4 more years of, you know, President George Bush. So I thought it'd be really interesting to make a series, a political art series about children crying about, you know, what was going on in the United States. They believe in this thing called end times. So it's it's a religious fundamentalist belief that the world eventually will end, and Jesus is going to come back, and all of the good people will be raptured to heaven, and then the bad people will stay on earth, and it's going to become hell on earth. So they believe that environmental destruction was a good thing, and the more natural disasters like tsunamis and earthquakes and fires, the better. And so it was good to have pollution, and it was good to have horrible destruction, because that meant that Jesus was coming back soon and they were going to get raptured to heaven. So it was a crazy, people still believe this. It's actually, I don't know what's wrong with America, but there's a lot of people in America who believe this still. But at the time that George Bush was president, he was like friends with those people, and he thought that that was good. So he was making policies that were helping those people, or not caring about the environment, because it didn't matter about the environment because Jesus was coming back, and so Earth was we're all gonna die within 100 years anyway, or maybe next year, or you know, this maybe 2012. So it didn't matter, so everything was being polluted. So at the time I was pregnant with my son, and I had just had my daughter, and I was thinking, what is going on with the world? What are we gonna leave our children? The oceans are gonna be polluted, everything's polluted. It was just horrible. So it was sort of a reaction to being a new mother and feeling sort of hopeless and feeling frustrated that the President of the United States believed in this nonsense. When people asked me how I got the children to cry originally, I didn't take it very seriously. So I sort of said, oh, I gave them a lollipop and took it away. But that isn't actually the truth. The truth is more that the parents got them to cry. Sometimes they cried by them, and in many cases they cried with for no reason. And then in some cases their parents would give them a lollipop and then ask for it back. I think when people think that I somehow interfaced with the child, that's when people get upset, but I actually did nothing to the child. I basically was like the camera operator here. I was waiting, I was behind the camera, and the child was here, and their parent or nanny was next to them trying to get them to cry. I did not do anything to the child. The bears were a reaction to the anger that I felt directed at me from the crying children. I sort of I was joking, you know, that it seems safer to do portraits of grizzly bears than it is to photograph any more children. But also that I wanted to show a picture of a really angry bear, because that's what I felt like everyone was yelling at me on the internet. The horses were really hard because none of the horses that I photographed were trained, except for one. And the horses were the most dangerous animal to shoot, which people don't believe. I've photographed lions and tigers and grizzly bears and polar bears, but the thing with the horses is that they're prey animals. So monkeys and bears and then lions and tigers that I photographed, those are predators. So if you're sort of mellow and they're mellow, it's fine. Like, you sort of have an understanding, because they know that they could kill you if they wanted to. So you just sort of have to be chill and it's all fine. But the horses are not that smart, and they think that you're going to kill them at any moment, and they're really strong, and they're not used to flashes going off. So that was a crazy project, because I was trying to photograph really expensive, high-end, you know, horses that were sort of show horses, or horses that cost $500,000 or something. So I couldn't get anyone to let me bring a horse into the studio, except for the one trained horse that I got in Los Angeles. I had to set up a stage in the horse ring at the stables. So, you know, we had to set up either white, I did either white or black fabric, and then, you know, the lights, and then the horses would like kick over the lights and things like that. Yeah, the horses were crazy. You know, they're sort of masculine and feminine. They're like Adonis men. They're also sort of subservient and in bondage and traded and dominated, like most animals, but in a similar way to women. Horses are really, I guess, you know, one of the first subjects of art, you know, the cave paintings and all that. And so people have always been fascinated by horses, and horses have always been such an integral part of human society. You know, people need to ride them for transportation and all that kind of stuff. So I thought there must be, you know, I was just researching nonstop on the internet, because it's easier than researching anywhere else these days, and, you know, finding some really interesting things about horses. There's a British scholar who writes a lot about horses, and he, I remember thinking and talking about how I thought that the bits in the bridle that the horses wear were like bondage. And I found this British scholar who had written about horses and bits and bridles, and compared it to something that's called a scold's bridle in medieval England. It's basically a torture device for women who were gossips and scolds. And basically, when men thought their wives were being annoying, they would put this metal cage over a woman's head, and like it had like a serrated tongue piece. So if she spoke, she would cut her tongue, and they could like lead her around in the town square with this metal cage on. And also the metal cage had like animal ears on it. So she was being treated like an animal and gagged. And I thought that was really interesting. And I thought and every time I say this to men, they're like, oh yeah, they should have that now. They think it's funny to make that joke, but it's not really. I've been interested in feminism and those kind of ideas for a long time, because basically, you know, I was really interested in fashion photography, and then when I went to art school, I started learning more and more about that world, and I suddenly sort of had a epiphany. You know, I loved Helmut Newton, but suddenly I was like, what are these pictures of women? I don't know. It seemed like a sort of a rude awakening that all these photographers were male fashion photographers photographing naked women. I didn't really like that. You know, be a man, don't be a girl. You know, it's just so embedded in our culture to not be a girl, or being a girl is bad, being a woman is bad. I think political art, I don't know how much it changes people's minds. Because I think the people who look at art are already the people who agree with you, probably. But maybe a little bit, just a little bit.